The president also reacting for the first time on camera tonight to the verdict involving his former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. Guilty on 8 counts. As I mentioned at the top, jurors could not reach consensus on the other counts. Just a short time ago, the president saying this doesn't involve me, but what he went on to say about Paul Manafort. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas at the courthouse tonight.
Tonight, President Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, is a convicted felon who could spend the rest of his life behind bars. After 4 days of deliberations, the jury rendering its verdict, guilty on 5 counts of tax evasion, 1 count of failing to report a foreign bank account, and 2 counts of bank fraud. They were unable to reach a verdict on 10 other counts, and the judge declared a mistrial on those 10 counts. Manafort stone-faced as the verdict was read, winking at his wife Kathleen as he was led out of the courtroom. His attorney later addressing reporters, saying Manafort got a fair trial.
Mr. Manafort is disappointed of not getting acquittals all the way through or a complete hung jury on all counts. He is evaluating all of his options at this point.
Prosecutors accused Manafort of masterminding 2 schemes, one to hide millions of dollars from the IRS, the other to defraud banks into lending him millions more. They said he stashed $60 million in 31 offshore bank accounts, telling the jury, use your common sense. Does it make sense that Paul Manafort had 31 overseas accounts and that he forgot that he had to report them? They argued he used the money to bankroll a lavish lifestyle, posh homes, fancy suits, and $18,000 Python jacket. The trial, the first big test for special counsel Robert Mueller, and an extraordinary fall for Manafort. Just 2 years ago, he was running the Trump campaign, guiding the candidate through the convention.
They're going to see a leader. They're going to see a decisive person with the human side who cares about people.
Trump seemed thrilled.
Paul Manafort has done an amazing job. He's here someplace. Where's Paul? Paul Manafort.
But soon Manafort was pushed out amid a swirl of stories about his work for Ukrainian officials with ties to Moscow. Last summer, a dozen armed FBI agents raided his apartment, seizing a trove of documents.
I've always found Paul Manafort to be a very decent man. I thought that was that was pretty tough stuff.
And last week, even as the jury deliberated, President Trump still rooting for his former campaign chairman.
I think it's a very sad day for our country. He worked for me for a very short period of time, but you know what? He happens to be a very good person. And I think it's very sad what they've done to Paul Manafort.
Mr. Trump refused to rule out a pardon, and tonight the president sounding dismayed by the verdict.
It doesn't involve me, but I still feel, it's a very sad thing that happens. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. This started as Russian collusion. This has absolutely nothing to do. This is a witch hunt, and it's a disgrace.
Pierre Thomas with us outside the courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia tonight. And Pierre, Paul Manafort faces significant time in federal prison, perhaps the rest of his life, just based on what we witnessed today. And we also know tonight, Pierre, it's not over for him. He faces yet another trial and separate charges from the special counsel in just a few weeks.
That's right, David. He faces another trial in Washington, D.C., beginning September 17th. And on the 8 counts he was convicted of today, he faces a maximum of 80 years in prison. And remember, David, he's now in jail on allegations of witness tampering in that upcoming trial. David?
Pierre Thomas with us every step of the way on this, Pierre. Thank you. The president has called this a witch hunt. He said it again today. Just moments ago, you heard it. The trial of Paul Manafort, a very big test for special counsel Robert Mueller and his team. Terry Moran has covered the courts for years and special counsels in the past for us. Let's get right to Terry tonight. Terry, you heard the president. He just said it. It had nothing to do with Russian collusion. So we continue with the witch hunt in his words. But what does this mean for Robert Mueller?
Well, the stakes were so high for Robert Mueller and the whole office of the special counsel, David. They aimed high at the president's former campaign chairman. This is the first trial to go before a jury, and they are relieved tonight. They got major convictions, which, as Pierre points out, will put Paul Manafort behind bars for a long time. But this was not a ringing endorsement of this prosecution. There is no question the jury didn't like some of this case, couldn't come to an agreement on it. If anybody's the winner here, it's probably the jury itself. In a highly politicized environment, they managed to reach a verdict very methodically. It was a victory for them. David?
And they took several days to do it. All right, Terry, Pierre, Cecilia, Tom, our thanks to all of you tonight.